Hey everyone, welcome back to the Europa build. So I realized there's one little thing I should have done a while ago, and that is install the oil pump. Not exactly the most exciting part of the build, but kind of important if you want the engine to live. Once that's sorted, I actually take a drive over to the body shop to check out the Europa shell. And that's where things start to get really good. The fiberglass work is almost done, and they're laying down the first coats of primer. I tell you, seeing it in primer completely changes the car. It's finally starting to look like something again, instead of just a science project. So hey, stick around, because this is the moment the Europa starts to come back to life. Alright, one thing I didn't do before was I didn't put the oil pump on the motor. I had it in there for clearance, but I didn't put the gasket on and the adhesive, so one of the things I need to do this morning is go ahead and mount this up to the engine block. I'm using the good old trusty Toyota seal packing here. There we go. Now I've got 3 bolts to mount this. I think these are all 5/16 by like 1.25 inches. And this gets torqued down according to the manual. The oil pump to the block goes to 15 foot-pounds. So I've got my ratchet, my torque wrench ready, my socket. So let's go mount this up. All right, I'm going up slowly. I'm going to feed in the gear. I know it fits because I took it out. But she's a tight fit. Ah, here we go. All right, now I need to just engage those teeth. See if I can get a bolt started. Actually, I'm not sure how I'm going to get the torque wrench in here. I totally should have done this when it was on the engine stand, but I didn't. Just snugging them up with my hand right now. Well, it would help if the carburetors were not on there. I might just, those are just on there temporarily. I think I'm going to pop them off. Okay, been through them twice, torqued them to 15. I think that's good. So our oil pump is mounted. Hey, you know what? Let's take a break from this engine for a while. Let's jump in the car. I'm going to go see Justin, who's painting the Europa. I want to check out the body, see how it's coming along, and see how we're looking for paint this month. Super exciting. All right, let's go check it out. All right, so there she is. And there is Justin, painter extraordinaire. Guy's fantastic. He's like a forensic investigator with paint. It's been so interesting to hear his stories of the history of the paint on the car. And he's doing just a wonderful job on the car. It's hard to tell from a video, but as I rub my hand, this is so ridiculously smooth. Justin, how the heck has this project been going?
So as you remember from the condition of the yellow paint job, the main problem was that there were visible sanding scratches. So on the yellow coat, under the clear coat,
you could see it in the paint. Yeah, it was horrible. Yeah.
Pigtails from an orbital sander. So originally my first thought was we've got to get rid of the yellow. Hopefully that's where the deep scratches are, the sanding scratches. And my assumption from those sanding scratches is that somebody went really aggressive with an orbital sander, hit it with primer, and then hit it with paint without letting that primer shrink back and get into the sanding scratch.
That's right. In that video you sent me, yeah. I'm going to put that in here because you explained it so well in that video.
Right.
And it was amazing,
yeah,
the lack of care they took when they prepped this thing for paint last time.
So I had to keep going through a few layers of this car's had a few paint jobs. As we know, it was black at one time, and then apparently it was red from the factory.
Yeah.
And the sanding scratches, unfortunately, were all the way into the fiberglass itself. So at that point, you don't want to try to remove them from the fiberglass because you'll take away too much of the fiberglass material. So I've done a skim coat. You can see the one that's on here right now. 99% of this will get sanded away, and it will just leave this very light glazing putty in those 40 or 80 grit sanding scratches that are in the fiberglass itself. Other than that, the other main issue is that, and this I think is probably from factory, there's a general waviness to a lot of the panels. So if you take a block and you just real quickly do that, you see it's sanding here, it's sanding there, but it's leaving a strip in the middle bit there that's not sanded.
Yeah, I see that.
And so what we'll do when it gets its 3 coats of high build epoxy primer, then it will get blocked down. The epoxy primer will have enough of a build that it will allow us to get that completely flat. There'll be no waviness whatsoever. I mean, this is where I have to be careful not to chase, perfection to the end of time. It's a 50-year-old fiberglass, hand-laid fiberglass car.
It's such an easy hole to fall into, though.
It is.
It happens to me all the time.
It is, and it's also, the longer you live with a car and get to know it, and understand where it's good and where it's not good, the more you want it perfect. And so it's ready for primer. Right? That's the job of a high build primer, to provide you layers that let you block it smooth. I have wanted to get the body itself as smooth as possible because I don't want to rely on the primer entirely for that, because you have to leave too much on, or you can burn through it in high spots. Neither of those are great options. So,
but that just takes more time, right?
It does. Once the primer goes on, you get 3 coats of the high build primer on, leave it for a solid week so that it shrinks into every single crack, nook, cranny, sanding scratch, any imperfection that might be left. Then it's going to get blocked out. This is 220. Start with 220, then 400, then 600.
You go all the way to 600?
All the way to 600.
Wow.
Yeah. Probably for the 600, I'll use the orbital sander with a soft interface pad. It will be flat at that point. The blocking will have been done. All I want to do is refine the scratch further to a 600 because the paint we're using has a metallic in it. 400 is enough for a flat color, but if there's metallics will sink. The actual little mica material will sink into any scratches that are there, and it can affect, you can see that. So we'll go all the way to 600, and it's what the manufacturer recommends for this paint. Painting day itself will not be done here. This is my home shop, but we'll go to my brother's shop with a paint booth. The primer is white. The color is kind of a bright lime green metallic. It'll probably take 3 coats to get full coverage there, and then we'll do probably 3 coats of clear. Based on how that goes, we might be done after 3 coats of clear. What I may want to do is flow coat. I may want to sand the horizontal surfaces, the roof and the engine and trunk lids, sand those with 800 and do 1 more coat of clear.
Wow. Look at the view he has. This is a beautiful property, Justin.
It's a nice work environment.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, let's look at the back. Remember we saw like where Lotus actually binded the fiberglass together, the different parts, and you can actually see that in areas.
Yeah, there's a seam right here, and this was a weakness. Right in this area here, you could push with your finger and it flexed in and out, so I laid some fiberglass.
Look, it comes all the way from here, all the way up.
So right under here, there's I did a good 3 layers of fiberglass matting just to reinforce, because it.
You could almost poke your finger through that.
You could, yeah. And then, just sanding here, there's a drain hole here.
Yeah.
As I've sanded here, hand sanding pretty lightly with probably 120 grit, it went through.
You went through?
There's a hole, yeah. So we laid some more fiberglass. Luckily.
I'm surprised in that spot.
Who knows why, but the nice thing is that you can get to pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
So if you have a weak area, so there was one over here too. You can actually see the matting still. I haven't really smoothed it down from the back, but just sanding here. One of the things you notice if you have to use a little filler somewhere, if you see it come through the other side, you need some fiberglass reinforcement.
You need something a little more substantial.
And I know people will see this and they see a lot of filler, and filler gets kind of a bad rap. You don't want a car covered in Bondo. But the idea is you use it to shape and refine your body and your body lines, and you get rid of most of it.
Yeah.
So here's an example of why the bodywork was so rough on this Europa and why there were visible sanding scratches through the last coat of paint, the yellow coat. As I took it down layer by layer, I kept hoping I would find the source of those really bad sanding scratches in a previous layer of paint or primer, but unfortunately they were all the way in the fiberglass. And you can see them here. And so what I've done is a light skim coat of a very thin glaze putty, because the only other way to get them out would be to actually sand down into the fiberglass itself really aggressively. and remove a lot of material, and there's not enough fiberglass to do that. This is thin body work. You see on the other side, I've got the skim coat there. On all the vertical surfaces, sorry, the horizontal surfaces, I see a lot of this. So the two issues are the sanding scratches and also the way the orbital sander was used. You see these sort of football-shaped oval marks in this area here and a few more throughout. That's where someone used the edge of an orbital sander a little too aggressively. So instead of keeping it flat, they were impatient. They tilted it. Yes, you can remove layers of paint faster that way, but on a fiberglass car, you can also alter the shape of the fiberglass. And so what we had here, in addition to sanding scratches, was an incredibly wavy surface. So we do a skim coat, very thin, and then we use blocks. Rounded block along this rounded corner or area here, a flat block, a longer one too, through the middle of the panel. Once again, the curved one as we get to this raised lip. And now this is as smooth as glass, both very smooth to the touch and flat. All this waviness is gone. The filler here has filled the low areas. Pretty much anywhere you see white, it's because it was low. Because I've gone over it with the blocks multiple times, and this white is staying there, and so that means it's filling the low. So we'll do that over there also. It's already been done on the roof. It's going to need to be done on the top of the front fenders because these are quite wavy also. You can trust this kind of work to the primer, and it is a high build epoxy primer that I'll be using, but I would rather have a flat substrate for the primer to go on top of, because even then there are going to be imperfections and waviness that you can't really feel, and the build of the primer will be more than enough to work that out with blocks without any breakthroughs. The problem, if you rely on primer alone and you start working it, you've got really low spots, you might run through the primer on the high spots, you might burn through the primer on the high spots, still have to fill the lows and then have to reprime. So this is a little insurance prior to primer to make sure that we don't have to reprime it.
Well, I sure am glad you are working on this car, because you have got this down to a science and it looks amazing.
It's funny because it's going to look amazing. It looks straight now. We've done the body work. So a good example here, and we've had to leave a lot of filler on the front. We just had to, because this was so low, right? And there were so many low spots here. This was so much higher than this.
Do you think that was just the way the fiberglass was formed from the factory?
I think so. I don't think that's down to anybody doing anything to here, because this was sort of a general waviness. Not to mention this is a damage repair here, so we have another seam and joint where a piece is put back together. That probably had something to do with it. Cars of this age go through so many heat cycles, and I don't know that fiberglass has the same response that metal does in that situation. But multiple layers of paint, lots of vibration, bending, flexing while driving, and you just get imperfections. And again, that's where blocks and guide coat come in.
You can see here where the old marker lights were. Those were removed.
Yeah, the old marker lights there, and then it's been covered, but there were markers you can see there.
Oh yeah, you can see a little bit of that cut right there.
I think that was a good mod, personally.
Me too. I love the look.
I think
cleans it up.
It does clean it up.
Yeah.
It looked a little bit insect-like when it had those multiple eyes.
Kind of did.
Yeah.
Well, Justin loves Lotus. As a matter of fact, I think the next car he's doing after this one is going to be 85 Esprit, I believe it is. And it's going to be really fun to see how that one comes out as well. But he's in the Raleigh area, North Carolina, by me. So if you guys are looking for body work at some point, reach out, drop us a message, and we'll get you connected with Justin, and maybe he can help you out too. Well, after I got out of Justin's hair and let him actually get some work done, he got some primer on. Later that afternoon, I got a text message with a video attached. Take a look.
Priming is done. 3 coats of Tamco high build epoxy primer. 3rd coat just went on, so it's still wet. Laid out great. Overall, I'm really happy with it. Always when you prime, there's a little part of you that hopes primer can do the impossible. So, you know, this fiberglass has an awful lot of pinholes, and part of me hoped, wow, maybe it'll fill it all. It definitely filled a fair amount, but there's still there. It can't do it all. It can't fill everything. So there will be some filling to do. That's okay. I got to sand the entire thing down anyway, so it's not a big deal to be adding filler, just skim filler to get those pinholes filled. What I like so far, first of all, no hose drags. My biggest fear when painting a car, especially in a fairly cramped, confined area, is you're moving along with your gun and you're not paying attention to your hose, and it wipes across a panel and completely ruins it. That did not happen. There's definitely a couple of runs. I had to make sure that I got plenty on in a few spots where I knew the fiberglass was really rough. So particularly back here, the taillight area, and the back of the car in general is probably where the fiberglass was the worst. And so I really gopped it in here to smooth everything out. You can see there's still pinholes. There's a run right there. There's a big run right there. It's no big deal. These things dry, boom, 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 sand them right out. The entire car, every single inch of this primer I just laid down needs to be sanded. You can't not paint on top of cured epoxy primer. It would be too slick. All the exterior body surfaces will get block sanded to make sure everything's super flat. Starting at 220, then we go up to 400. Then probably the orbital sander with a nice soft interface pad, we finish at 600 and we're ready to paint. These areas that don't get blocked, like in here, in the rain channels, in the door jambs, that will just be handheld piece of 220 and then 400, then 600. Just do it that way, not blocking it out. Pretty exciting to see it all in one color. We never came up with a solution for the engine vents, but maybe we can figure out one before actual paint. Got enough primer in there. The whole point in there was not to do any build. It was just to give the paint something to stick to, so we've done that. There definitely is overspray. Not bad though. Not too much there in the interior. Not too much in the engine bay. A little bit here and there. A little bit in the wheel wells, but we can easily just take the flat black and paint over that. The undersides of both of these lids got the most amount of overspray because the way these things are built, this wraps around, and I had to prime there. So there is a lot of overspray on the underside of those, but that's pretty easy to fix. So look at the beautiful white Europa. Thinking about where it came from to get to this point. This is really probably only the halfway point in the job. But everything after this is a lot easier because this primer is a whole lot easier to work with than raw fiberglass is.
I think it looks good. It's really encouraging to see it all covered in primer now. That just motivates me big time. Probably another 3 weeks before I get the car back, maybe 4 with the paint on it. Then we can put it back on the chassis and start to really finalize the assembly. The chassis is waiting for that body. I still got a lot of little things to sort out. The shift linkage isn't shifting, so need to work on that. The clutch cable is interfering with the exhaust, but we're going to look at all that on another video. All right, so we do have some more work to do on the chassis, the cables. We've got some interference problems and things like that, and we are going to drop in the 123 distributor. We'll do that next time, and a bunch of other little stuff, because there's a lot of little things going on right now while we wait for that body. But until that time, thanks everybody for watching. I do really, really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. All right? All right. See ya.